This is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and today we have two good friends joining us on the show, Zac Borovay and Driscoll Otto.
And this is David, coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Belmont Shore in Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
I thought you were going to do vibrato this time.
I can't do vibrato. I can barely get anything out of my mouth.
Sounds like you were going
point.
for vibrato.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to episode 171. And before we get started, we have some news. First, I'm afraid to say we're going to start off with some very sad news. Broadway actor and colleague Nick Cordero left us yesterday at the too young age of 41. He died due of complications from COVID-19, and our best go to his wife and child. And it's really a shocker and just tells us all that, you know, this disease will kill you at almost any age. And he was a healthy man. He had no complications. And I mean, as far as, secondary issues, and, it's terrible. So Broadway's in mourning.
I think the article said he was struggling with it since March. It's quite a long battle.
It was a long battle. In other news, the Following a Score webinar that my colleague Sarah Underwood and I presented a week ago is now available on video. The link is on the Light Talk Facebook page. Next bit of news is Hamilton on Disney+. We talked about this last week. I paid my $7 and I watched it, and I must tell you, I highly recommend it.
Big spender.
I'm a big spender, right. I wasn't going to pay like $800 to see that show. I'm sorry. It was a great show, but really, I mean, that's like, what was it? Well, you didn't pay anything because you know people. So I don't know anyone.
Yes.
I pay retail for Broadway. Do you guys pay retail for Broadway? Zach, Driscoll?
Driscoll helped me get the tickets to Hamilton, actually.
Okay.
See? Everybody has friends.
Yeah.
He's friends with Burr.
Did you pay retail, Driscoll?
I didn't.
Okay.
One of the performers got me the standing room seats.
Excellent.
All right.
Well, there you go. Well, anyway, I highly recommend it. What's really great, if you have a 4K resolution television, it's Disney Plus. Much of it is in 4K, which is really fantastic. And it really shows Howell's outstanding lighting design. So we would like to say kudos to Howell. And also there's a lot of great close-ups, too. Things you don't see normally when you go to the theater. So for the people who have seen Hamilton, I think it's going to also be a great experience for you.
So you did pay $800 if you factor in the cost of the television.
That's right.
It was closer to $3,000.
Oh, there you go.
But yes, you're right. I did pay a lot more than $800.
He's a big spender in some ways. He is a big spender.
I do spend money.
And Hal is on deck. He's coming up this season for an interview.
That's right.
That's right. Hal will be here in a few weeks. That's fantastic. We're very excited about that. So listen, we're going to be talking more about it next week's show, because I'm going to force my brothers to watch it on TV, to watch the Disney version.
I watched it last night.
Okay, great. Then we're going to be giving you our views of the incredible work on that show by all the artists. And, I've worked with Nevin a bunch of times. I totally forgot that he did the sound for that show. So he's amazing. I'm just going to say that it's a real bargain at $7.
I was going to say I would have paid $8 if they had not if they had not cut off the designers' names at the end. What was up with that? They shrunk it all down.
Well, you know how it is. How it is. The designer's always get a short shift. And it usually happens so fast. But they had a nice background to the names. I must say, the background slide they had up there was really nice. And seriously, we do have an important public service announcement from Behind the Scenes Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Initiative. Even with the uncertainties of life in a pandemic, the unique environment and stresses of working in the entertainment industry are extremely challenging. It's critical to make sure you and those you care about stay healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically. The Behind the Scenes Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Initiative is providing tools and resources specifically for entertainment industry workers at btshelp.org/mental health. That's btshelp.org/mentalhealth. These include Be Seen, Be Heard, a 24/7, 365 peer-to-peer chat app. an online therapist finder that only includes therapists who understand our industry, anonymous online behavioral self-assessments to help you understand what you're feeling, easy to navigate resource links so you don't get overwhelmed looking for help, and suicide prevention information and posters to help save lives. So go to btshelp.org/mental health for more information. And one more thing, and we're probably going to be talking about this with Driscoll and Zac, be sure to write your senators to urge them to quickly pass the extensions to the PPP and the increased unemployment insurance programs. This is absolutely critical for all designers and technicians who have lost work due to the coronavirus.
Yeah, I just wanted to add for folks about the mental health resources from Backstage Cares. I posted a couple of files on the Facebook group today so people can access them that way for links and other information, in case they didn't get everything from the announcement.
All right, thanks a lot, Stan. Yeah, so, okay, let's get started. Today we have a very special episode that features two of our wonderful friends and colleagues, Zac Borovay and Driscoll Otto. Zac and Driscoll are two extremely accomplished stage designers who are strictly freelancers. Before COVID-19, both designers were booked solid, but like most other artists and technicians in the live entertainment industry, when COVID-19 showed its ugly head, most of those gigs were canceled or postponed. So we decided to invite them back on the show and have a 30-minute Let's Talk About discussion to hear how they are surviving during these uncertain times. So Zac and Driscoll, welcome back to Light Talk.
Well, I do want to just point out and thank you for addressing that mental health component earlier in the show. I think that's really crucial for our industry. What a lot of people that we refer to as the civilians don't necessarily know or may not be aware of is that most of us in this business are here because we love it. We've chosen it. We've wanted to do this since we were kids. And that our entire social life, our self-worth, all of the things that make up who we are as people revolves around this work that we do. And so right now we're in a place where we can't do the work that we want to be doing, and we don't know when we'll be able to do it again. And that's, potentially tricky ground to be in terms of mental health. And so it's really important to find those ways to help yourself feel whole.
Do you try to avoid the COVID-19 subject in that back and forth? Or?
I mean, it's inevitable. Both of us, you mentioned Nick Cordero earlier. He was in Rock of Ages that we worked on. He's been in several Rock of Ages that we've worked on, but as recently as the one in LA that he was in when the pandemic hit. And so, we have the family that we're born into, and then we have what we call our show families. And, he's part of that show family that we're in. And so we're definitely talking about that kind of stuff and thinking about him and feeling for his family. And then also sort of just talking about what are ways we can reinvent the work that we do in a way that's safe, to support our families, to support our own habits and needs, and how do we move forward. So I don't know if we get too far into the nitty gritty. I mean, it's very challenging for me and my family because I feel like so much of the medical stuff and the science stuff has been politicized, so it's very hard to tell what's the right thing to do and what's going to be next. But at the same time, just okay, how long am I going to wait until I try to figure out how to do some work?
Well, Driscoll, this has hit your wife too, right? She's in the industry.
She is. Her work stopped about 2 days after I was sent home from Virginia. So we've both been just, doing what we can with two little boys at home. The whole time. We actually put the boys back in school 2 weeks ago. School opened up about a month ago, but we put them back in school 2 weeks ago, wanting to wait it out a little bit. And then the first week they were back, after that week, we found out that one of the teachers had COVID. So the whole school shut down, and we've kept the boys out, and I think we're going to wait until the actual school year starts back up before we redo daycare.
Zac, what about you? Is your wife in the industry?
She is not. And luckily for us, one of the things that's happened, she's a therapist, and they loosened the HIPAA laws so that teletherapy is now covered by insurance. And she's been able to help people and continue to work. And it's good too, because, for people like us who might need that teletherapy, but we're out of work, now we have more access to it because our insurance can cover it now. But I've been, spending a lot of time teaching 1st and 5th grade.
So when this hit, guys, what were you working on at the time? And because I know, Driscoll, you're in Virginia, as you just said. You're working on an opera, I believe. And what projects are on the table? And how many shows did you end up getting postponed or canceled?
Well, I just left Salt Lake City, where I had a Barber Seville that was supposed to go into its final dress the day that I left Virginia. And I found out on the flight that had gotten shut down completely. Then I get to Virginia, and we started tech of Aida, or lighting sessions of Aida. And about 4 hours into the first day, they shut us down. And that same day, I got emails and phone calls that a show I had in New Jersey was closing early. The show I was about to go do in Dallas was postponed and has since been canceled. Show I was doing in Madison, Wisconsin was postponed and then canceled. I have since been offered another show at Dallas Theater Center, which has now been canceled also. So it's sort of a endless string of postponed, canceled, and there's still stuff in the fall, but nothing's a guarantee right now. So
right. How about you, Zac?
Yeah, I mean it's the same kind of story. I had a couple of things for a gaming convention called E3, and that just kind of disappeared. But what I thought was kind of interesting, it was like dominoes, the way that things would tumble, and you're like, well, that thing's not going to get canceled, and then that would get canceled, and that thing's not going to get canceled, and then the Disney thing's definitely not going to get canceled, right? And then that gets canceled. And it's just sort of like, now even with the things that are still on the schedule, we just assume that they're, everything has a question mark automatically.
It was when the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo canceled that I knew we were in trouble.
Yeah,
it's like NASCAR canceling. Really, that's really crazy. Yeah. And this is a story that we hear from all of our colleagues and friends. Have any of the companies that canceled offered you any type of severance at all?
I was very lucky in that everything that I had through May that canceled paid in full. Even if we hadn't started tech, they all found resources to be able to pay all the designers and all the casts and everything.
Yeah, I don't have anything that's outstanding. I mean, I have a lot of promises that if and when we can do this, we're definitely going to call you. And then I also have several with contracts. Like one of the things was the Broadway show Anne that I have done, it's almost like 8 or 9 years ago, about Ann Richards, was going to be at the Pasadena Playhouse this past spring with Holland Taylor, the original star. And it was just on PBS, but obviously we weren't able to do it in person. And for that show, it's sort of like, it was one of those things where, the plug gets pulled at the same time that the messenger is allegedly biking across New York City to your agent's office with the contract in his messenger bag. And you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. And, there's so many factors. Like one of the things that Driscoll and I talk about a lot is if and when the time comes that we can all go back to work, and it's sort of like 9,000 shows trying to get into 500 theaters kind of thing.
Right.
Like, how is that going to work? What are the parameters? There's going to be actors that are like, I'm supposed to be in these 8 shows. Right. Now I have to pick which one do I actually want to do. Uh-huh. And, is there going to be enough lights? And at the same time, it's also like, right now, there are however many shows there are in New York that are dark, but in a building full of equipment. When the time comes that, they're able to turn the lights back on, so to speak, I'm sure some of those shows are going to have to close, and then the shops are not going to have enough room to store all the equipment that's going to come back all at one time.
What's happening in the city in regards to television production? What are you seeing?
Well, neither of us live in New York anymore, so but I think the governor just announced the new guidelines like a week or two ago. But I didn't really pay attention to them, just in the sense that I'm not there and it's not a part of the world that I exist in. But my wife would have been if we were still in New York.
I mean, I have some partners that through Mode that have been working on a few things in LA, and it's a challenge because like one of them did something with Katy Perry on American Idol, and it's, you know, there's a whole layer that's just like what Driscoll and I were talking about with the kids in the school, where it's like, just because they said you can go back to work, does that mean that you're comfortable going back to work? And so there's like the contrast of people who are desperate to go back to work, but at the same time, they don't know what are those milestones that need to be reached in order to feel comfortable and safe going back to work. And at the same time, you have talent who are feeling that same thing. What are you going to do to make me feel comfortable if I have to be in a room with 7 other people? Like, how far away are they going to be? So I think there's a lot of additional layers of planning. My sister is a producer in New York, and I think that like her job is now much more extensive because she's got to deal with all these people's fears and anxieties in a way that they didn't have to before.
Yeah, a lot of us are being asked to be experts in fields we're not even rudimentally trained in. Yeah.
Yes.
Because you were talking about schools, and you know, for the past several weeks we've been talking about these plans that some universities have of reopening, and you know, Driscoll just told that story about his kid being in a school and the teacher had it, and now they had to shut down the school again. It's really a huge challenge to try to figure out how to create a safe space in schools. And if I had kids, I would not send them back to school right now. There's no way, and not until there's some sort of vaccine.
Yeah, I know my neighbors right here are both professors at University of Maryland here. And one of the things they've talked about is the scenarios that they've come up with for open campus, you know, like if everyone is comfortable going, but also providing an option for the student to learn from home, and also providing an option for the teacher to teach from home. So if, for instance, the students are comfortable being on campus, but the teacher is not, then the teacher has that option too. And it's a lot of scenarios to really sort of think about how to execute all at one time. And like, as you see with Driscoll's kids experience, that you have to be able to sort of pivot on the fly if things change as well. So it's very challenging.
That's why my school system basically announced, almost 2 months ago, that we are just doing online so that the professors can prepare to create online classes. Right. What's going to happen, I predict, is that you're going to see these outbreaks, and then the professors are going to be asked immediately to put classes together, and they may not have been preparing.
Exactly.
And that's the problem. But getting back to your point, Zac, about feeling comfortable in our industry, there are obviously basketball players that are already said we're not going to play. There are baseball players to say that. How do you think we could make our industry safer? I mean, we're not experts. We don't know viral things. But really, I mean, is it doing outdoor theater? You know, I don't know.
So one thing that I experienced last week over at Dickey's Arena, I was helping Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra out with a 4th of July special. And it was fascinating to look at how they laid the pit out. They had an average-sized pit, one you would see in a typical opera or symphony layout, but it took up an entire arena because every player was 6 feet apart. They had tables for them to sit at out in like the main concourse, and all of those tables were 6 feet apart, and it took up an entire area where normally you would have concession stands and shops and people milling about and doing stuff, and it ate up the entire space of the arena just to put on one symphony orchestra.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how we make it safer, but the thing that I've been trying to figure out is what do we do in these pits? If 6 feet is the new normal, how do we have operas and musicals sound the same when we definitely have nowhere near the same space.
I don't know if you guys heard this, but today it came out on the news that over 250 viral specialists, doctors, scientists are urging the World Health Organization to announce that this virus is airborne. So 6 feet may be an old standard.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like blowing through a trumpet.
Yeah, exactly.
They're talking about the cloud that we all have around us. The other piece that came out today in the news that I thought was most fascinating is we've all been under the impression that this is a respiratory disease, and in fact, it's not. It's a vascular disease.
Yeah.
It's sticking inside the blood vessels, and so wherever you have small blood vessels, kidneys, lungs, brain, those kinds of places are where that inflammation is happening. That's why they're having success with blood thinner, and they're having success with the steroids to bring down that inflammation. So that's why the death rate isn't really going up, but the infection rate is. And the other piece of news was that all viruses over time become more transmittable but less lethal, and that the H1N1 flu we have today is the 1918 flu. It's really easy to get, but it doesn't kill you, and that's going to happen over time. I think the whole game here, guys, is the clock. It's really all about time, and how we play and adapt time. That's my feeling, and we're having conversations about having MFA students, for example, who should be doing productions this year, which they're not going to do, and applying the all but dissertation mentality. Well, you're all done with your coursework, and we're going to bring you back as a guest artist, in a sense, to write your dissertation, to finish your design. Right. That's what we're going to pitch that. I'm sure that's done with PhDs. So why can't it be done with MFAs? We're just just creative thinking on our part, because it's not fair to those students to say, "Oh, you're going to do some thing that we sort of dream up for you. That's not really the lab, the full experience."
Right. Yeah. My kind of concern in all of that is that even if it's a few years with no, in-person school, that like the kid who was going to be a part of his school's production of Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum and was going to have that moment where he grabbed the spotlight and realized this is what I want to do for the rest of my life is now not going to have that experience. True. And so how do we still create that connection and reach out to those younger people even to help them find their way?
So let's talk about survival. I mean, as far as mental health, I know that when this started, you guys had a series of Zoom-based happy hours.
Yeah.
Did you guys keep that up, or did you make a decision not to, or what?
It wasn't that there was a decision. For me personally, the happy hour that was most convenient to people on the East Coast was not convenient for life in Dallas with 2 children.
I'm on the West Coast. I'll drink any time of the day. So
sounds like the light talk problem too.
Right.
So for me, it was really fun, and really, like, at first when the emotions were high and it was difficult to try to understand what was happening, and nothing seemed clear. Even though nothing's clear now, I feel like we understand the world a little better than we did back in March. And now, and I think also, like Zach and Jimmy and I, we all started a routine. At that point, we had no routine, and it was really easy to just say, let's all get on happy hour and drink and talk. But we're talking about doing one again soon. Just because it's nice to see people's faces.
Yeah.
Because Zach was right earlier, when he said, like, my social life, my best friends are the people that I'm working with on a show at that moment. That's who I bond with. That's who I, get emotional with. And I haven't had those best friends in 4 months.
So you've modified your position since this began. Have you modified your position about Broadway reopening January the 3rd?
One of the things that we've talked about before, that when back in, I don't know what year it was, 2006 or 7, when I approached our union and I said, hey, projection designers, we're in the building, we're doing the same amount of work as everyone else. We deserve access to pension and healthcare and all this job safety and all that other stuff that the other designers are getting. Let us in the union. And so I organized my fellow designers, and we joined. At the time, there was 19 of us. That I feel like moving forward in Broadway, part of the challenge there is when I looked back and I said, there's got to be a way to make this go from being a job to a career, and health insurance and pension and those things are what makes it a career. That when they talk about in a 1,200 seat house, we might be able to put 500 people safely in there. I'm concerned about the ability to generate enough revenue for it to continue to be a career as opposed to just a gig. In a lot of these theaters, that I think they're going to come back to us, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I can't see how they'll be able to pay people what they're accustomed to being paid if they're not able to take in that much money. Or, because the flip side of that too is like in a place like New York in particular, where, I think people are going to be much more cautious to buy tickets. So even if you're saying we're only going to sell 50% of the house, you're going to have people that are maybe I don't need to see Book of Mormon until there's a vaccine.
Do you think the only people who have deep enough pockets will be Disney?
Well, I mean, I know that they're going to still have nice deep pockets, but I can tell you that on the theme park side of things, they cut about 85% of the stuff that they were doing.
There may just be, I don't know. It's hard to predict the future and how long we're going to be in this, but the economic food chain is probably going to get shaken up regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that all the producers and the audiences have going for them is that we do this because we love this and because we have this yearning to entertain people in some way, and we will not be stopped. And eventually we will continue to entertain you in whatever way we can.
What do you see happening in Las Vegas right now? I noticed that tickets are on sale for Ka. Are they doing the same social distancing thing?
I think that's their plan is to do a reduced seating setup there. But, I think the world of Cirque du Soleil is kind of topsy-turvy right now.
Yeah, I saw today they had an infusion of $300 million into their funds to reorganize.
Right, and I think some people's fear is that the way they're going to do that is to cut the losses that will be cut will probably be Blue Man Group, which is unfortunate because a couple of years ago they were a very profitable entity unto their own before Cirque bought them. And I learned quite a bit about this idea of some financing company that bought Cirque and had its debt and was able to place the debt onto Cirque. And that's how Cirque got into debt in the first place before this even happened. That they inherited debt that the company that bought them placed onto them when they bought them. So sort of like they were already trying to dig out of the hole before the pandemic hit. I mean, you can see like all across America in the places where the virus is surging and where it's not surging, that it's just people have a inherent need to like gather in a group and be entertained. And I think that we all hope that that's not going to go away and that eventually we'll be able to do it in a safe way.
Looks like Ka is sold out till the 31st of August. 31st of July. I take that back. And you can get a ticket on the 1st, and about half of August is sold out. So something's going on.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, we can also tell you part of the way that works, in Las Vegas, going back decades, is the casino buys a percentage of the tickets, and then they give them out to the high rollers or as gifts. My grandfather owned a casino in the 60s.
Oh, that's a whole nother episode.
That's an interesting story coming out. Let's hear more about that.
It was called the Bonanza.
You could do a whole episode on Zach's grandpa.
Really? That's really interesting. So he owned the Bonanza. Okay, I know the Bonanza. Yeah.
He did. Wow.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get into that today. I really wonder this about Las Vegas. I mean, I've seen the casinos, how they've socially distanced the casinos. And it doesn't seem like it's going to work very well, but we'll find out in a few weeks, won't we?
I mean, I think part of this is all just experimentation. Like, let's see how much can we open it up. I'm like making a little motion with my hand, like opening up a tiny bit, a little bit more, a little bit more. Oh, got to close it back some more. Open it again, close it again. Open
Unfortunately,
it again,
most states didn't do that. They just opened everything up. They opened all the bars up. They didn't, they didn't require masks. They didn't, and that's why we're in the position we're in right now.
Well, I remember Colin Quinn had a one-man show on Broadway about 10 years ago where the opening joke was something about how, like, we have so much technology in our society that we were able to find Saddam Hussein hiding in, like, a hole, but we still need to put a sign up that reminds people to wash their hands in the bathroom.
Right. Yes. So do you guys have any sort of tips on how to stay sane during this time it's so unknown. We don't know when this is going to end. Obviously, you guys have families, and most, a lot of our colleagues have families. How do you stay sane? How do you stay focused? I mean, do you have hobbies? Do you like play? I know Zac plays, right? He plays music, so that's a good thing because that has helped me personally. But what else do you do?
I mean, personally, I flip high-end bourbons to rich guys in Dallas. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on this show.
Why not? What's wrong with that? High-end bourbons are fantastic.
I mean, just keeping in touch with friends has been what's kept me sane.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And are most of your friends in the theater?
I was trying to think. I have like one friend that doesn't do this that I still keep in touch with. It's hard. I mean, I've never lived a life where I've been able to keep those friends because we lose a lot of what's in common.
Yeah, I think like I've been trying to use this opportunity to expand on the skills that I have. I mean, part of it has been with music, and I've reconnected with some of my colleagues and professors at Berklee College of Music, and they've been doing these amazing free webinars with all kinds of famous bass players from history and like little lesson type things, and that's been really nice. And also, like trying to hone my craft of what I do, even though I'm sort of, in a way, it's like being back in college, like, designing a show for fun in my head. I mean, we've been looking a lot into these like kind of virtual gigs, which have been somewhat successful now. Like, a lot of places for a short while, everybody was just like, I'm killing all corporate meetings. I'm killing all, product launches, et cetera, et cetera. And then different events have started to come up online. And, at first they were sort of fancy upscale Zoom things. And now some of them have like a full on broadcast look, and it's all done with equipment that you either have in your home or they can send you sanitized equipment, like send the speaker a sanitized laptop and microphone. And then it gets funneled through a switcher. So when you look at it on the webcast, it looks like a full like CNN broadcast, or like the most recent Apple, the developer conference keynote that they did, which was a pre-produced package that I think for the short term, that is part of the future of our industry, are these virtual events. Part of what's good about Zoom is that it's helped sort of, in a way like how the iPod made the MP3, which before the iPod existed, it was like, oh, what a crappy format for music. It's like, and now it's perfectly acceptable. So when people see something that looks like Zoom, now we're all open to it. And when it looks better than Zoom, it's like, wow, super production values.
Maybe the silver lining to that is our in training that our students will have a broader set of skills and are ready. So I think there's maybe, some upsides to it. And as long as it doesn't last, for 5 years, but if it's a year or two, I think it ends up being a good thing in the long in the long view.
Along that lines, one of the things we were saying as we closed down AIDA, because the world was changing and we all knew we were going to be shut down and nobody's head was really in the game properly. But how exciting and hungry and how wonderful these first productions out are going to be. Because we're all going to bring this like hint of creativity to the
Everything would look like Hamilton.
Exactly. Everything.
It'll be an explosion of creativity.
Fantastic.
Along the line of honing skills, as you were saying, those of us that are in USA, United Scenic Artist and IATSE have access to LinkedIn Learning, which covers everything. Like you can learn how to knit, I think, on there. But
I'm going to learn how to cut hair so I can help my wife.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good point. If I could just say, so LinkedIn Learning, which used to be, what was it called before that? Lynda.com.
Linda? Yeah.
That is a phenomenal resource. And even if you just have a little bit of money to buy into that for a month or whatever, you literally can learn and the lessons are great. It's a phenomenal resource.
Well, if you remember United Scenic Artist or IATSE, it's free for you.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I've joked about with Driscoll, having watched my children go through online learning through their school, is like we're creating an army of ultra collaborative online workers now.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we joke about all the time, is like, I can't believe I flew all the way out to Fresno for a 2-hour meeting and then flew back. That hopefully we'll never have to do that again.
Save the planet. What's interesting too, ironic in a sense, in the universities, where for years we felt like we were being not hit over the head with get into online learning, pushing us to do that. And now that we're in this and we're all willing to do it, no, we want you back on campus. Well, wait a minute. What happened to that we really want you to adopt this online learning thing? It's like, it's a little bit manic.
When they realize that tuition is different between two schools.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of the problem.
Are you hearing any kind of chatter from people saying this is it? That I'm moving on.
Oh, people giving up, you mean?
Or just saying it's time for me to retire and do something else.
I haven't heard that. I've heard fears of a necessity to move on, but I don't know anyone that's said, hey, what a great time to
start fresh.
Yeah,
start new.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like what you were talking about earlier with the PPP and the CARES Act and all that stuff, I know that there are definitely people, and I've even had these thoughts. I'm like, once that CARES Act goes away, am I bringing enough money? Because eventually the bank is going to say it's time to start paying us back for your house. And they're not going to care if the theater has 50 people in it or 500 people in it. They're going to want the money. They're not going to be flexible. And so... there's definitely people that are starting to wonder if they need to pivot, at least for now. And like one of the things that I've been talking about with people in general is sort of like, like I was telling my wife the other day, like I had a fantasy that I could meet with a headhunter who could like look through my resume and skill set. And this would be somebody, obviously, since it's a fantasy, that has an intimate knowledge of Broadway and understands everything in my career. And could say, here are the 15 other jobs that you might be qualified to do in the short term, and here are the parallels so that you can explain it to the hiring person.
I don't think that's a fantasy. I think that's real.
And you know something? I think that I'm not just saying this to be optimistic, because my brothers will tell me that I'm rarely optimistic, but I think you couldn't have come from a better place being a theater person, because we all know that theater people are best trained to solve problems, critical thinking, and flexible, and leadership, and all these other amazing things that we have.
Oh, sure.
So,
Definitely.
we could even start our own businesses. So
we are our own businesses.
Well, but I mean something different,
it's true.
I
think it's really true.
5 designers in a truck, and we move furniture and stuff.
5 designers in a truck. No, I'm talking about, like, I've always wanted to start my own jazz club. And how we do it, social distancing, I don't know. It sounds like a terrible business to get into, but it's something that I've always dreamed about. It's something I'm, considering.
Sign me up. I'm in.
Maybe now's the time to do it. I was driving along a couple days ago, and I saw, where a restaurant used to be, and there was a big sign. It said, fantastic location, fully equipped restaurant for lease. Mm-hmm. They're going to be, sadly at the cost of a lot of people.
Yeah, that's sad.
There are going to be some real opportunities here in a year.
Yep, there's be a total realignment. Yep.
I mean, Driscoll and I fantasize about having some kind of barbecue business together all the time.
Yeah, there
barbecue
you go.
bourbon business.
Well, certainly Bobby Harrell would come and buy barbecue from you.
Oh, yeah.
Both Bobbies. You're making me hungry.
Yeah, Bobby Hale and Bobby Harrell. Two Bobby H's. Yeah. So, okay, what's the most optimistic thought that you guys have right now? as far as the future?
I think that people want what we have to offer, and everyone is anxious about what's the safest way to receive our talents. But the thirst for it has not gone away, which is critical.
I don't think it will ever go away. I mean, come on, theater's been around forever. And live entertainment's been around forever, so we're not going to go until we have holograms. It's not going to happen.
You know how, like in Yes, Steve Howe joins in like 1970, and he's still the new kid in the band. So projections, we've been here for about 100 years. We're the new kid. In 1,000 years, we'll still be the new kid in theater.
But wasn't Rick Wakeman the newest member before Trevor Rabin came in?
Well, I mean, it was like Howe came in for the Yes album. Wakeman came in for Fragile, Close to the Edge, Tales from Topographic Oceans. He left, and Patrick Moraz came in for Relayer. I could go on all night.
I knew I'd be able to steer you into a Yes stories right there. So everyone else is saying, what the hell are those two guys talking about? It's two old prog rockers, that's for damn sure. Well, listen, first of all, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show today. I want to also just publicly state, and I'm talking for Stan and Steve as well, is Zac, thank you for that bass line and that guitar part. It has completely transformed our theme song. So
it's great on my subs.
It sounds
I just want to say, I don't know if you want to go too far with Zac yet. At the last episode, David is threatening to remix that as a disco cut.
Well, you didn't. Okay, well, last week what happened was we had a letter that someone's Luther from Parts Unknown sent us a letter saying that he really doesn't give a damn who plays on it. He just wants to be able to dance to it.
He can't dance to it.
Him and his wife can't dance to it. So I'm thinking I'm remixing a disco version of it, but. I may never. I mean, never get. You have to pull out your precision bass for that.
You got it.
What's the big light and music festival? It happens every year in Vegas. What's it called? ETC or something? It's some weird electric.
The Electric Daisy.
Yeah, I mean maybe
stuff.
I think we premiere the new disco version there.
Oh, absolutely.
Bourbon.
What is a high-end bourbon? I'm not a bourbon drinker. What is a high-end bourbon?
I mean, here we go, guys. I mean, 15 years ago, you had high-end bourbons that were, $60 was a high-end bourbon.
Wow.
Now,
what's an example of a brand of a high-end bourbon from 15 years ago? 15
years ago, you could get Pappy Van Winkle on the shelf for $100, right? And that's, and now those bottles at the lowest end Pappy is $450, and the highest end is like $2,300. So and things that used to be on the shelf every day that should be on the shelf, people turn around for double the cost of what they get them at the store. Yeah.
And are you a bourbon drinker?
Oh, I love bourbon.
So can you tell the difference between $2,300 bourbon and $800 bourbon and $5 bourbon?
You're totally insulting this man.
I can tell the difference. Here's my little secret. I think there's a lot of good, $25 to $50 bourbons that are just as good as a $2,300 bourbon.
Okay, and could you tell us, have you ever dropped a bottle of high-end bourbon? Have you dropped it and had a crash?
But, man, I'm in some Facebook groups and I see some horror stories.
There's a bourbon Facebook group, of course.
Oh, there's a lot of them, yeah.
And you have a sponge on the floor soaking it up?
Exactly.
All right, well, I'm going to end this show now. Well, the rocking sound of the Luminoids with Zac on bass and lead guitar tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, and just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you choose to litigate, the law firm of Fleck,
Flock, Flare, and Glare, and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers. Coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, Dallas, and Silver Springs, Maryland.
And be sure to tune in next week when we talk about the lighting design for Hamilton on Disney+, plus the deeper mysteries of lighting design and technology on Light Talk.
All of that in the new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Thank you, Driscoll and Zach. Stay healthy, everyone, and stay happy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Light Talk.